final project for APCSA 2020, and welcome to, let me turn that down a little bit, let's go up. Welcome to Monster Melee, made by 2020 Rec Company. Anyway, let's get started here. We got 6 characters to select from: Arachneedle, Doug, Starman, Axolotl, Blobbert, and Random. So there's actually 5 characters here, but there's a hidden 6th character. And so I'll start off playing the game a little bit, and then we'll get into the code afterward. So we'll just go random here. Perfect. So we got attack between Blobbert and Arachneedle. So Blobbert has 4 moves. All of these moves are randomly generated for damage each time, and they re-roll every time as well. So technically, you're most likely not going to get the same amount of damage twice. So if I use Slam here, it does 1 damage to him, and he did 1 damage to me. Now if I do Slam again, it did 4 damage to him, and he actually did 19 damage to me, which is a pretty high number. I think it only maxes out at about 25 a move. So then let's use Rolling Rock, and ooh, I am getting beat up. But moves can miss as well, so you can also roll a 0, which is interesting. And so, yeah, I'm about to lose. And there we go, I lost. I lost by 9 HP actually, and that's the game over. I'm gonna play this through one more time to try and get a win out real quick. And there we go, I won by 2 HP. Technically, the player has a bit of an advantage here because I made it so that the player always attacks first. Therefore, if it was a situation like that, I got the hit before Arachneedle got the hit, and therefore, even though I had 2 HP, I killed him and he wasn't able to hit me on that final turn. So yeah, that's pretty much most of the game. I mean, you got the characters you can pick from. There's a hidden character, there he is, Random, a hidden character fighting Doug. Random has 4 moves that are all literally just random, and he's lost. Right. Anyway, let me get into the code real quick here. And so here is just the basic setup. So there's 3 main functions, I believe. Here are all my private variables that I'm using for the game. Here's the constructor, and then finally here's the first one, which is just run, and it runs the preload, the update, and the repaint. So my 3 main kind of functions that I'm using are, of course, preload, update, repaint. So preload basically does what it says. They're all pretty self-explanatory. The preload preloads all of my assets and stuff. The update updates every frame, and then the repaint repaints the updated frames. And so here's a look at the paint. It draws everything, and I'm basically using Boolean values to try and gateway like what screen people are on. So if is title, it'll draw the title screen. If is select, it'll draw the select screen, etc. And so is battle, and if the user and the computer are alive. Otherwise, if the computer is alive and the battle is no longer going but the user is alive, play the victory. And then if the computer is alive, play the death screen. And so here's the update, and the update takes all of the mouse clicks in as well to kind of check and see if the user's clicked anywhere and what the user did. I have them counted out here. And then here is if the user attacks on the updates. And finally, this updates, this does the computer's attack, and this one basically goes over user health and stuff, and sets the battle to false if one of the monsters dies. So preload preloads all of the images here. It sets up all of the attack values for all of the monsters. So here's a couple attacks for each monster. There's 4 attacks for each monster, and adds them all to an array list of attacks for monsters. And so, yep, here's the monsters being added to an array list of monsters then. And finally, down here we have all of the audio stuff. So audio, it's a big process to get every audio in. I have 5 audio files. I have oof when you lose, mega note is when you that's the battle music, victory stream is the win music, me channel is the loading screens, and hit is just the button, the sound that you hear every time you get a hit. And so yeah, these all load it, and then this one starts the me channel at the very beginning of everything. Here's my mouse click, which gets the X and the Y value of each mouse and sets it to a global variable, which I can then use throughout the program. And so that's my main file. As you can see, it's 511 lines. It was pretty long. But then I also have a couple other files that show some inheritance. So here's the first one. It's the monster class, and this basically sets up every monster, no matter whether they're the user monster or a computer monster. And so yeah, the functions for, here's the constructor. You have all of my getters and setters for the monster that I need to use throughout the thing, like getting their attacks, getting their image, getting their health, etc., setting their health. And then here we have the user monster, which actually I have the display function here, which displays all of the user monster's attacks as well as their image themselves. And then this is a hitbox test thing down here. And then of course I have the constructor up here. Here's a computer monster, which also has the constructor and a display. These ones don't really have any functions because I have most of the functions between the user monster and the computer monster are the same, so they just went into the monster class with the getters and setters here. And finally I have an attack function. So user monsters and computer monsters use attacks, and they're kind of composed of attacks, so there's a little bit of composition as well in here. And basically, yeah, here's attacks, and you have attack name, damage, and set attack damage, and then I can use those attacks to put them into an attack array list and then feed them to the user monster or the computer monster in their constructor under array list attack. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my game.